Hi everyone and welcome to a new tutorial. My name is Abdi for asART 3D and motion graphics. In this video I would like to show you how you can use Forest Pack plugin from iToo software to scatter some animated plants driven by tyFLOW. So in 3ds Max I have some assets already prepared. Well, not prepared really, I just imported them. We're gonna prepare them just for our animation soon. And this is that grass and this bush, and I also have that tree trunk here. I have these two models from the Chaos Cosmos library, and this tree trunk is coming from Evermotion Pack. Now, before we can do the scattering and everything using the forest pack, we have to animate these assets, and before we can animate them, we will have to prepare these things for our animation in tyFLOW. So let me start with this tall grass here, and I'm gonna just go and rename this to grass underline high. So because I'm gonna use this one as my high poly model, so to say. And now I'm gonna duplicate it, Control V, and make a copy, and rename this copy and make that low. So now I'm gonna hide this high polygon and work on that low polygon thing. And here are some things that we have to get rid of because we don't need them in our skeleton animation that we are going to create with tyFLOW. So first let me go and select all of these and then select them by material ID. So it will go and select all the things together, and I can go and get rid of them. Then select this guy, go and select ID, and now deselect those things that I want to keep, which are these larger leaves here. And I don't really want to keep any of these smaller things, so I'm gonna get rid of those things as well. So that is what I need to work with for the animation. So now let's go and prepare the bush, and after that we can go to tyFLOW. So here we do the same thing, going to rename it to high and then Control V, duplicate it and rename that guy low. Now hide the high poly and go and select one of these leaves here. Click on select ID and then delete. Select the next one, delete, and so on until you get rid of all these leaves that we don't want to use. So here I'm going to select this guy, select ID, and there we go. Now I am going to delete these smaller branches as well, these tiny things. And this is what we need for the bush animation here. Okay, let's go back to the grass model and then add a tyFLOW object in my scene and then go to the editor. Here I'm going to start with bird skeleton, drop it in here, pick my grass low poly model, and now I need more segments. These are just some big segments here, so I'm gonna give him some more segments by reducing the size of it. So the max length, I'm gonna bring that back maybe to 5. Then that will give me more segments here. As you can see, changed the topology a bit, and that is actually good for now. What I want to do is changing the thickness of those things, just scale them down a little bit. So I'm going to drop a scale operator in here, get rid of the unify scaling, and then set that X and Y value 30 by 30. So that should actually do the job. Now what I need is a small plane because I want them to stick on into that plane and not move at all. So I'm gonna add that to my scene. And now here we can go and drag out a surface test. Go and pick that little plane here, and as you can see, it just changes the color because it is now sending them into this event. And I'm gonna change the distance to 1 centimeters because this is just too high. I don't want it to be everywhere. So just that little segment, that bottom part, gets sent to the next event. Now in the first event, we will go and use physics shape and turn them to physical objects, and now they will react to gravity and also to the ground collider here, because those are set in our tyFLOW setup. When we go to the physics rollout, we have the default gravity and the default collider. Now we don't need the default gravity here. I'm going to get rid of that, and we will add force operator later on into our scene. So for now we have all these physics shapes, and select that operator, and then scroll down here. Make sure you set the starting penetration to sticky, so they are not pushing away each other right from the beginning. The next thing I need is binding them together, so physics bind, and then I'm going to add a force operator here and give it some negative value for the gravity strength, so that will just drag them down again. So as you can see, now they are bind together and they fall to the ground. So in order to prevent them from falling, we send them to this event, and now the bottom part here, we will go and set those to kinematic. So we use a partner physics switch and then set it to kinematic, so that these particles will not go and react to any kind of force like gravity and etc. But they are still bind to our now these blue, let's say, particles here. Now after stopping them from falling, we will go and also stick them to this plane down there. So I'm gonna bind it to that object bind, and then pick this plane here, and then go and say lock to surface. So that should now stay there and don't move at all and not fall down. So we have a little bit of movement. This is because of our force and gravity here, but the real force that will work with that and gives us all the effects that we want to get is actually tyWIND. So I'm going to add tyWIND into my scene, then turn that towards my plant here, bring it up a little bit. Now go back to my editor, select force, and pick our tyWIND for it. So now going back here, when I go and play that back, it will just be too strong, just like a stormy thing, you know, it will break everything. So first of all, we have to go back to the tyFLOW and go to settings and increase or actually decrease the steps here to 1/4. And then we have to change the force and the strength for the wind. So I'm going to set that to 0.05 maybe. Go to the noise strength, make it 0.3, frequency 0.6, and the scaling maybe about 30 or even 18 or something. So now we can go and see how that works. So now the wind is just moving all the particles You can feel free to go and set that up the way you want it to have in your scene, but this is just to show you how you work with the wind effect and etc. So I would say that our grass animation is actually looking not bad, so we can go and make that a little bit more dynamic. They're just too stiffen right now. So we can go to the bind, the physics bind, and then show binding. You see that all the things are just bind together. That is because of our distance here. So we can go here and lower the distance to maybe something like 1. So they're not sticking all the way together. We could actually go even lower. Let me change the color here for you so you can see those bindings better. These are these yellow lines going everywhere. So we could maybe go to 0.5 and then bring this guy maybe to 5. So, and now this should move a little bit more. And now these too loose. So let me get back to 1 centimeters here and set that to 3. And I also forget to set my bindings timing to frame instead of continuous. So we go to timing, we change it to frame and set both to 0, so it will just affect the very first frame. And we will go and do the same thing for our surface test. So timing, change it to frame and make sure both are on 0, and that should actually take care of those fancy movements and collidings and everything that is going wrong here. So let's go back to the binding, and I'm gonna change the amount for the scale binding and the swing and stuff to 10 instead of 15 here. And now let's go and see what that looks like in real time. And we're gonna go and turn off show binding so we don't see that binding that looks like an error going on. So let's see what that happens. So this is that thing. Okay, we can also go and slow that down a little bit because that thing is going wild. Let me set that to 9. And that fixes it actually. It looks a lot better. Let me loosen that thing a little bit more. Bring it back to maybe 2 or something. And the distance 0.5. So it is moving freely with the wind. So I would say this is looking good for our grass animation. It's not too wild, but it is still a good amount of wind going on. So it will be nice for an animation to see what's going on there. And now we can actually go and duplicate the whole thing that we just created and use that for our bushes. So let me go select tyFLOW, duplicate this as a copy, and then rename that to tyFLOW bush. Then go to my first tyFLOW and turn that off. Yeah. Now switch to my tyFLOW bush, go to the skeleton and remove the shape. And now pick the second object that I need, which is the bush low. So add selected, and this will give us these branches. Let's go back here. Let me get rid of the scaling. So set the scaling back to 100. Actually, I can go remove it for this one. And then for my binding, let's go and bring that up. Set the distance to 2 maybe. And here the maximum bind to 3. So I go and do show bindings. That should actually work. Yeah, which it does. Let me go to the end and then play it back to see what that looks like in real time. But it looks good actually so far. We can always go tweak the amount of the wind and everything here in these settings. But let's see what that gives us. Yeah, that's good. It's a nice movement that we have. Now we can go and use that skeleton and animate our high polys. So go to the high poly for the bush, select that guy, and then we can go and hide the tyFLOW setups that we have. So with that bush high poly selected, I'm gonna add a so-called tyParticle skin to this. And now I can go and select my tyFLOW bush, which is the animation of the skeleton, and I will use that in order to move this high polygon mesh for me. So now when we go and move that, it is what we get. So we have our plant nicely animated with tyFLOW. Looks pretty cool. So I'm gonna do the same thing for our grass here. So I'm gonna go and enable our tall grass in high poly, and then go and add the tyParticle skin to this guy as well. And here we go and select the first tyFLOW setup. Actually, let me go and rename this one as well. So tyFLOW grass. Now when I zoom in a little bit, you see all these deformations here. Now we can go and change this. You can select that, and in your tyParticle skin settings, you can go and bring up the count amount here, the max count. Drop it just up until you see those deformations are gone. Then we move it. That should work well. You can also go and change the distance amount, so we'll stiffen that thing even more. But that is what we got. So we have now our animated grasses, or the tall grass, and also the bush that we have here. So now we can go and scatter these on this surface that I have here using forest pack. But I also have a tree trunk here in my scene that I would like to use. And let's go and deform this ground a little bit using a noise. And then maybe we set that to 100 or something and add a little bit more segments to it. So we go and change the scaling. Let's say that this is our ground here. Now when I move my tree trunk, it will, sometimes go into the ground, sometimes not, and I want it actually to be always on top of my surface regardless of where I am going to place it. So I'm going to use that, or just bring it to the center first, and then I'm going to use the tyConform modifier for this. Then I'm going to pick my surface here, to flat that down. So we're going to change the conform mode to volume, and this is what I get now. So I can now go and move that around, and that will be be always on top of my surface, no matter what shape I am creating or changing and stuff. So now let's go and add forest pack. And first I'm gonna go to the library and select some of the presets for some smaller or shorter grasses on my ground here. So let me go to layered lawns here, and I'm going to select these guys, load selected, and I'm saying no. So now I have my grasses all over the place. Let me just call that FP lawn. Then I'm gonna remove that for now, just hide it, and then add another forest pack. And this time I'm going to geometry rollout, add a new geometry, and then now I can go and select my high polygon grass that I have here, the grass tall high. This is the one that we just animated in tyFLOW. Here we can go and change the density, and I also can go easily to my areas and exclude these trunk. So I can go and select that object that will exclude that all around my trunk here. I have the possibility to go and change the scaling, so it will remove more or less in that area. So this is actually looking not bad when I set it to 120. And when I move that around, it will automatically go and change my setup. So it will remove everything regarding to the settings that we have for the exclusion. Now, these guys are the animated things, so I'm going to change their color a little bit to a greenish or something. So there we go. And now me decrease the density a little bit here, so we can see what we are doing for now. There we go. Now when I move my CTI, nothing happens because we have to go and activate the animation engine here. So scroll down to the animation rollout, and it is disabled. If you set it to follow geometry, it will do what the animation does actually, but the problem will be the reason, by the way, that is not working is because animate only at render time is checked on. So I have to uncheck this so I can see the changes here in my viewport as well. So when I move it now, everything moves just equally and simultaneously at the same time. And we can go and break this evenly movement by setting that to random samples. Now it will go and offset actually the playback time of each particle, or in this case tall grass in our scene, so they all look different, and that gives you more natural looking movement. Of course, this is just great having these features. Now we can go to transform and break that placement or position evenliness, so it is not looking like a grid or something. And then we can go and change the rotation, so they are all rotating in different directions. You can change all these settings and fine-tune them down here. I'm just using the default values for now. And scale is also a cool thing to have them taller and smaller and bigger actually, so distributed that way in your scene. So now this amount is actually not even bad. I'm gonna leave it for now, what we have here, and then rename these guys to forest pack grass tall. So next we go and add another forest pack, into our scene, and this time I'm going to the geometry rollout, add a new one, and select my bush model. Here we do the same thing, so we activate everything for the transformation. So we have scaling, rotation, and the position, randomness. And we also have to activate the animation. So set that to random samples. And this will work just as it did with our grasses. So now let's go and change that density, distribute even a little bit more of them here in our scene maybe. Something like this. Bring in all the forest pack elements that we created. And now let me add a camera. Go and select my camera, change some values. Exposure, depth of field. Then I'm going to add it here into my environment. Me switch to the top view and add a sunlight, just a V-ray sun. Yes, and bring it up to about 3600 centimeters and move it somewhat towards the center of the scene. Let me go where my camera is. Camera is here, so it's okay. That should work. So let's go and change the background color to the gray one. And this is actually our scene, and that should work pretty well with our animation. So now I'm going to use Vantage to live preview the animation and see what we got so far and how that looks like and what we have to change maybe. So let me start Vantage and show that how that looks. Here we are. This is our scene so far. So when I go and move my CTI now here, we should see some animated plants here in our scene. I hope you can see that, because I'm just recording that live. It might be that it will not show it fluid, but yeah, you're gonna see some changes here for sure. Now we can go and exclude this trunk from our bushes as well. So when I push that away, let me go and just change that density for these bushes a little bit more, so we have more of them here in our scene. Let me go and change the camera so we can see actually what we have. So then move this guy, oh sorry, this one around. So now select the bushes, and then let me go back to the areas and then select these three trunk here. And then when I move this close to my so forest pack bushes, they will just get removed automatically depending on my settings. So they are sitting here right now because that distance is still too close to it. So 100 is just too close. Let me go make it 150. See if that helps. So 200, yeah, 200 that works. So I always grab the wrong thing. So let me grab this guy and now move it around, and as you can see, that removes all those bushes as soon as I go closer than 200% of this volume of my object. So I could actually go and change it to 250, so I have a bigger area getting cleaned around it. Again, grab the wrong thing. So there we go. And that will move him nicely. And this is what it looks like here. So go and change this to not real time. And let's see if that works when we just run the animation like this. Yeah, you see it's all movement, so frame by frame it is moving right now. But it works perfectly. And we can also go and move in a little bit with the camera. So we change that camera angle so we see some of these tall grasses that we just animated. So that things are moving as well. So I'm going to select these and make it more dense. So distribute more of them here. So we have a good amount to look at. And this is the scene now. When we go and run the animation, you're going to see all these small grasses moving to the wind as well, with these bushes and etc. And of course, you see all these changes much better when you animate your scene or render it out and stuff. But for now, it is just when I go and change some frames here, you see the changes. So it works really perfectly with each other, Forest Pack and tyFLOW. So this is actually it for this tutorial. I hope that is helpful and useful to you guys, and I'm gonna see you soon in the next tutorial. Have a good one and have a great and successful time. Bye bye.